both Tash and myself work for an organization called We Move Europe. We are a digital campaigning organization, and we have a people power focus. And what that means for us is that while we work in partnership with amazing organizations like Greenpeace or Climate Action Network, WWF, also with movements like Extinction Rebellion, our focus or our specialization, if you want, is to try and bring the voices of citizens, of people who are possibly not associated to any group, to any NGO, to European Union politics, to the European Union democracy. And that's to do that, we mostly rely on digital tools. As of recently, we've also started to try and support climate movements as part of our theory of change in that front. We are not a climate only organization, but at the moment it takes a lot of our capacity. And in that area, we're trying to support movements mostly in Poland at the moment. And when resources and capacity allow, I hope, we will try to expand to other countries as well in the Central and Eastern European region. The reason why we're focusing on the Recovery Fund is because, well, first of all, as an organization, we've been campaigning on this topic since the debate started in April 2020, because we believe that really it is an excellent, if not the best at the moment, leverage that we have at our disposition to transform our economies, to make them climate friendly. And ignoring this opportunity for us is not an option. And that's why we're focusing on this, and that's why we organized this webinar. I'd like to ask you, before I start with my presentation, to please, let me close this, yeah. To please think about these questions. Tash will copy paste them in the chat so that we don't forget about them. But I'd like to keep in mind these questions throughout the presentation, because I'll be asking them again at the end. We'd love to hear whether your group has plans around recovery funds, that is, for the spring, for the summer. And if it's not around recovery funds, if it's around climate or any other environmental topic, we'd also love to hear about those. It'd be also great to hear your thoughts on whether there are synergies of your upcoming work with what we're doing, and whether you would be interested in incorporating the demands that we have, that we're campaigning for, to use recovery funds to transform the economies in your countries, your region, or wherever you're working. So I'm moving on. So I'm going to start by explaining why we're focusing on this. Of course, we're campaigning on this, and that's why this is important for us. But there are 5 reasons why we decided to put much of our capacity into this topic. One is the enormous size, the sheer amount that we're talking about, and I'll give some perspective on this in a minute. 2 is the way it is financed. 3rd, which countries receive most of the money. A hint is that most of the money goes to the countries that are not so green, and that in itself, it's an opportunity. The 4th reason for us to focus on recovery funds are the conditions imposed by the European Commission to receive the money. And 5th, the risks not to do anything about this, because this money will be injected into our economies anyway, and the risk is that it'll continue to pump up the business as usual model. So as I said, I'll start by mentioning the size. You all know about the European Union budget, independent of each country's budget. We're talking about a common budget that normally is organized in periods of 7 years. For this period, we're talking about a budget of 1,074 billion euros, which, if we do the maths and we divide that amount in 7 years, we're looking at this. We're looking at an expenditure for the whole European Union of 142 billion per year. Now, if we think of the recovery funds, we are talking about a pot of money that is that amounts to 750 billion euros. And these are going to be spent throughout a period of 3 years. Again, if we do the maths, we're talking about an expenditure of 250 billion per year. So as you can see, I don't need to explain this, we're talking about almost double the yearly assignation of the standard EU budget. We're talking about lots of money, and not just lots of money, but with an expenditure compressed in a very short period of time. I mentioned before, or I think I did, that the official name, the technical name of the recovery funds is Next Generation EU. That's the name that they receive. And in fact, this pot, the Next Generation EU, is actually made of a number of sub-pots. Each of them have slightly different priorities, but altogether are consistent. They are all meant to achieve, in theory, because the practice could be very different, to achieve a greener and more digitalized economy in Europe. Of all these, which again, I wouldn't recommend you try to memorize, and I don't think there's a lot of, there's much point. The most important is this one, the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And that's actually where the pot takes the money, the informal name from. Recovery is the short for Next Generation EU. It amounts to 85% of the whole thing. So obviously it is the most important part of the pot. I'm moving on to the second reason why we're focusing on recovery funds, which is the way they're financed. These represent a historical step in the history of the European Union. For the first time, what we've seen is that the Union is ready to get indebted as a whole, as a single entity. Therefore, the richest and most powerful countries are ready to support with their debt those that are weaker, those whose economies would mean that they would have to negotiate loans with higher interest rates. Basically what we saw happened in the previous economic crisis, the 2008. For Europe, it was more like 2010 economic crisis, right? At the time, solidarity really wasn't there. This time round, it could have been better for progressives, but indeed it is a step forward when it comes to solidarity, cross-country solidarity within the Union. Let me clarify that these 750 billions that the Union is going to take as a loan and as a single entity and then distribute across different countries, depending on their needs, will be distributed half as loans and half as grants, meaning the loans will have to be repaid, even though it'll have a low interest rate, or at least lower than a country on its own would have been able to achieve, to negotiate, and grants don't have to be paid back. Let me give a bit of information as to which, and this is the third reason why we're focusing on recovery funds, how these funds are distributed. They are not equally distributed. This graph, let me remove this. Yeah, shows that they are quite unequally distributed because the decision followed a number of criteria. The most important of which was how each country was affected in the first wave of the pandemic. Let's not forget that the ultimate reason why these funds have been put forward, and I'm aware I haven't mentioned this, but I'm sure you know, is the pandemic and the disastrous consequences of the pandemic on our economies. The first wave was mostly taken by countries like Italy or Spain, which is why you see them at the top. Poland comes third, even though Poland actually didn't take such a big hit in the first wave. it is taking a bigger hit indeed in the second and third waves. But Poland is also receiving lots of money because there were other criteria factored in when distributing the money. And Poland is a key country in the Central and Eastern European region, not least because of it is a hub of power with a leadership role for other countries around it, for other neighboring countries. But also, well, it has a particular government which needs support and challenging for the rest of Europe to be able to move forward with progressive climate policies. I will not go through each of the countries and what they're going to receive. This is available online, but I will also share the presentation afterwards. I just want to give a bit of nuance to what I've just said, because indeed each country is going to receive a different amount from the Union in terms of recovery funds. But the recovery plan for each country will not rely entirely on those resources. So the richest countries, like for instance, Germany or France, will be topping these resources up with their own resources. For instance, France is going to receive 40 billion in grants. They will not receive loans. And on top of that, they've added 53 billion for a total of 93. That is the amount France is going to spend in their recovery. So as you can see, less than half will come from the Union. For Germany, the figure is even higher. Germany will be given 28 billion in loans. Sorry, in grants, apologies, not in loans, in grants, nothing in loans. And on top of that, they will add 110 billion for a total of 128. Instead, some countries like Spain will not take advantage of all the money they've been offered. For instance, Spain, 140 billions on offer, 77 of which will be grants, the rest, 63, are loans. The Spanish government has currently refused to take loans because they don't want to see their debt ratio affected. And so the recovery plan for Spain will not be of 140 billion, but of 77 billion. At least that's what it looks like at the moment. And before we stop for questions, I just wanted to give you a bit of a perspective of, again, to emphasize the point of the size and what they represent. These are figures of what the recovery plans, as they stand today, because they haven't been approved yet, they're just proposals, represent for their 2020, in terms of their 2020 GDP. For Spain, we're talking about 7.5% of their GDP. For Portugal, it's an enormous 19%, and I think it's actually 21. These are my calculations, and I just wanted to be conservative, but I think it'll be 21. For Czech Republic, we're talking about 11%, Romania 14%, Bulgaria 10%, France 4.5%. For Poland, we don't know, because Poland has not released any information yet that I know, not even about the size and whether they're going to take loans or not, etc. So as you can see, we're talking about, again, a very big chunk of money. I'll stop here and take 5 in case you have questions at this point before continuing. I'll embrace the silence. Okay, so I'm being clear, I take it. That's great. In that case, sorry, let me share my screen again. Oops. Right. There was a 4th reason out of 5 why we're focusing on recovery funds, which are the conditions imposed by the European Commission. We have civil society to thank for what's happened. It is true that the Commission had already made an important statement, an important decision with the Green Deal, etc., before the pandemic happened, to move towards a greener economy. But it is because of the mobilization of movements and NGOs throughout the past 8 months that the conditions are not great, but pretty favorable for progressive organizations and movements. Let me, before I explain the pie chart, let me just emphasize that, one, we're talking about the conditions that apply to the Recovery and Resilience Facility. If you remember, this is the largest sub-pot of the recovery funds. Yeah, it's 672 billion. And these are right now only applicable to EU money. And this is important for countries like Germany or France, where more than half or even most of the recovery plans will not be covered by EU money. At the moment, in fact, if we compare the Spanish proposal vis-a-vis the French or the German proposals, we can see that the Spanish proposal is way more ambitious in terms of greening the economy of the country. That is because they have to follow the conditions of the European Commission. This is not the case for Germany, or for most of the money of the recovery plan for Germany, and that shows in their plan. It is not that green. Same goes for France. The conditions I'm referring to are here. 37% of the expenditure has to contribute towards climate goals. 20% have to contribute towards digitalizing the economy, and I will not delve into this right now. This is not the webinar for it, but as you know, digitalizing the economy can result in a greener economy or not. So this is one of those areas we also need to be careful about. The rest of the money, 53%, does not have to follow these conditions, but has to be guided by the do no harm principle, meaning no harmful activities for the environment can be funded by recovery funds. I know this is a very abstract, broad statement. There is something called annex in the recovery funds, which is partially guided by something else called taxonomy. I'm sure you know these terms, but for those who don't, I will just pass over them. And if we need to address them, we can in the questions. But basically, it is the principle, the do no harm principle, it is operationalized in an annex that explains more in detail what amounts to harmful and what doesn't. In principle, fossil fuels are excluded, but gas is not. And so that's important for us to bear in mind. When we speak about risks, we will also speak about the risk of greenwashing, because big energy companies are very able to end up using the money for polluting purposes and find a way of pretending they're green. And lastly, the fifth reason, the risks. Well, I just mentioned one of the risks of not doing anything about these funds, which is greenwashing. The country I'm most familiar with, because I'm from there, it's Spain, and I can already see how a beautiful plan, when you read it on paper, it looks like beautifully transformational. We can already see how the biggest and most polluting corporations here are rushing. They've been rushing since June already to start agreeing backdoor informal negotiations agreement with the government for activities that are far from green, but that they will ensure they will look green when they present them to the European Commission. The other risk is clientelism. Corruption is a bigger risk in some countries than in others. In Spain, it is a big risk. So basically, it's, well, you know, clientelism is just about the government and the people in it having friends in the business world and ensuring that their friends get the contracts. There is a third risk, which is that funding goes towards already planned investments that really have nothing to do with this endeavor, that really are not transformational. Basically, gaps that governments didn't find the money for in previous budgets, and the risk is that they will try to make those gaps match with the resources coming from the Union. And the fourth and last, well, there are many more, but of those I'll speak about today, is access. Again, when referring to Spain, what organized civil society here can see is that grassroots organizations, cooperatives, medium and small enterprises know nothing about these recovery funds other than the name, other than they're coming. In some countries, I think I'll venture to say Poland, recovery funds are not even recognized by name by most people, by most citizens. And so what's happening in Spain, and I'm sure this will also happen in other countries, is already happening in other countries, is that only big companies that are working with PR companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers, like EY, etc., are already preparing their pitches. They are already lobbying. They have already, in fact, gotten informal word that they will get X amount of millions. Right, but there are opportunities. And this is, again, what this webinar is about and what we wanted to do. Basically, there are opportunities to continue to campaign for a green and fair use of funds. We need to tell people need to, when I say people, I mostly mean citizens and those that are not associated to NGOs. But there is an opportunity not just to campaign, but also to request those funds. Again, I'm going to refer to the Spanish example because I know it best. There are right now civil society coalitions getting formed to apply for this funding as cooperatives, networks of energy cooperatives, or networks that want to promote green mobility. They are coming together to form a bigger entity so that they can also capture some of this money, so that it doesn't end up just in the hands of big corporations. As I said, good news is also that some civil society coalitions are starting to form to do the above in some countries. I know of those in Spain, France, Italy, and now in Poland as well. And in Brussels, there are some NGOs based there that have or will launch campaigns very soon from March to ensure that the European Commission remains vigilant, so that the European Commission applies the conditions agreed on very strictly and looks at the proposals and the investments very much in detail. However, and this is the problem, the Commission has already said, we will be looking into plans, we will not be looking into investments. So they are not going to be monitoring the list of investments, the list of ultimate recipients. And that's problematic. That's where our fight has to be, in addition to ensuring that the plans are properly designed. Questions? Or am I still very clear?
Clear.
Wonderful. I'm about to finish, I promise. Let me share my screen again. How do I do this? Right. This is my last slide. Oops.
There's a question from the chat about explaining more about the investments not being supervised.
Right. Sorry, who's the question from? I didn't get it. Andras. Well, never mind. Right. What the European Commission, and that will become clear now in this slide, is going to approve, is going to give green light or not to, are the plans. What right now is being negotiated back, in closed doors, behind closed doors, but will be officially approved on the 30th of May by the European, or by the 30th of May by the European Commission, are the plans. So the report that each country, each government will present to the Commission with intentions. Like this is how much money we're going to spend in this area under this component. This is how much money we're going to spend for this other purpose, etc. That's where the role of the European Commission mostly stops, although there'll be something called implementing act that will be negotiated in the summer. Again, let me come back to this in the next slide. But basically, what the Commission is not going to do is to review each of the specific investments, each of the specific projects that will be funded. Or at least that's what it looks like at the moment. What I know the Spanish coalition working on recovery funds want to do, and what I know the Brussels-based NGOs want to do with the campaigns they're about to launch, is to ask the Commission they actually do review those investments, they actually do review those projects, and they do so and take the money back when the money has not been spent according to the objectives and the conditions agreed on before. So this is a bit of a gray area. At the moment, it doesn't look like the Commission will be looking into investments. Not sure if they have the capacity, but certainly not the plan. But I know that a big part of civil society right now wants to ask the demand from the Commission that they do look into projects as well to avoid greenwashing. Awesome. Any other question? Great. So I'm moving on to the last slide, which should clarify a little bit more what I've just said. This is what the timeline for the decision-making process is going to look like from now. By the end of March, countries will send their first drafts. Well, first draft is a way of speaking, because in fact, some countries have already been sending previous versions since, well, in the case of Germany, since June, in the case of France, since September, in the case of Spain, since October, but they are kind of advanced compared to the rest of countries. Officially, the first draft has to be submitted by the end of March. I think it is important to remember that there is a European Council summit on 25th and 26th of March. I think it's important because it's obviously, it's an obvious moment there. Although it is the Council versus the Commission. By the way, I'm not explaining what the Commission and the Council is unless anyone wants me to, because I assume you know. From that point onwards, the Commission has 2 months. These 2 months are quite critical for campaigning, for gearing up to capturing funds as grassroots organizations, until the 30th of May. By the 30th of May, that's the deadline for the European Commission to approve the plans. Then the European Council has, sorry, not the European Council, I wrote it wrong there. It's actually the Council of the European Union, the ECOFIN, the finance ministers of all governments have 1 month to also green light these plans. This is a clause introduced by the Dutch government in the negotiations back in the summer in 2020. They wanted to make sure that they themselves also took a look at the plans. So by the 1st of July, all countries should have green light for their plans. If everything goes as planned, which, to be honest, with recovery funds, you never know. At that point, 13% of the money could be transferred if governments request it. The summer is also an important moment because up to the 30th of September, countries have to negotiate with the European Commission the so-called implementing acts. This is still a bit blurred, as in, to what extent or to what degree of detail the European Commission is going to request that these laws, because these will be regulations in each country, are put forward. So these are regulations that should enable the expenditure of these monies in each country, and to do it in the way agreed with the European Commission. At this point, I don't have a lot of information about what these implementing acts are about, but if there is interest, I can research it further and share more information. I think it'll be also an important campaigning moment. But it is not over on the 30th of September, because every year in 2022 and 2023, there will be review moments. There will be 2 each year, the first of which will be in the spring of 2022. If as civil society, if as European civil society, we've done our homework and we've managed to convince the European Commission that they also need to look in detail, not just into the plans, but also the investments and the projects, then this could be upcoming moments, opportunities for us to say, take the money back, because look, this country has spent the money in, I don't know, coal mining instead of whatever else. And yeah, do you have questions at this point? Else, what we can do?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
This is Georgi from Bulgaria. In the final draft of the regulation of the recovery plan, I saw that the deadline of submission of the national recovery plans is 30th of April. Not, you said here March.
30th of
I'm not sure right now.
The 30th of April was the current 30th of May. So 30th of April was up to 6 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. The final deadline for, okay, Andras, we'll hear from you in a second, thanks. The final deadline for the European Commission to approve the plans was in principle the 30th of April. But because there's been delays, they've pushed it back to the 30th of May. I hope I've made myself clear.
Yeah, in the presentation was in March.
So in the end of March, it's when countries present their draft to the European Commission. And then the Commission has 2 months to look into that draft and have a negotiation with the government in question. By the 30th of May, they have to approve.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think Andras maybe has information that I don't. Bye, Olivier. Thank you for joining. Andras, would you like to?
Yes, thank you very much. I am Andras Tukas from the Clean Air Action Group. This is a national environmental organization in Hungary. And we have been working on the EU funding already for many years. And 2 years ago, we did about 2 years ago, we did an international project where we surveyed civil society experts from almost all EU countries about EU funding, and really the results have been very disappointing. So in many countries, even in every country, much of the EU money has been used for purposes which are harmful for the environment. And even in some countries, they say that EU money has caused more harm than good. So it is very important not to repeat this. I will put in the chat the link to this survey we had. And what I would like to add also that there will be not only the, as you also mentioned, there will be not only the recovery money, but also the, the usual EU funding, the MFF, the Multi-Annual Financial Framework. And there is also the national budgets of each country. And both the And the European Commission would like to influence, of course, they will work on all these issues, not only the EU budget, which will be how this money will be used should be in the written in the partnership agreements and the operational programs. So it is very important to concentrate not only on the recovery fund, but also on the partnership agreement and the operational program, and also on the national budget. We talked several times with the European Commission, and they said that first of all, they would like to have also reforms, not only investments, but also reforms. And this reform should be in accordance with the country-specific recommendations of the European Commission and the European Council. So there is a chance to influence through the recovery plans and the partnership agreements, also the national budget. This is very important. And now we are working on a project. I already wrote in the chat the website of the project, the link to the website. This includes 8 countries, civil society organizations of 8 countries. This is funded by the German Ministry for the Environment. And we are making proposals for the national government and European Commission on the conditions of EU funding, how this, under what conditions this funding should be spent. So I think these proposals are very interesting, and I propose to all of you to look at these proposals. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, you're very right. As we said before, 110 billion euros from the 128 billion euros recovery plan of Germany are from national resources. So it is very important that we don't look just at the EU money in some countries. In fact, as you said, Andras, it is about investments, and the Union is going to request to demand reforms. And just so that you get a sense of the dynamics, Germany was an early bird, so to say. They presented their plan in June, and it has not been approved yet. In fact, the European Commission got back to them and told them, hey, this is not good enough in terms of reforms. And so they are having that negotiation right now. In fact, there is a parliamentary debate and vote, I believe, in the German Parliament coming up at the end of March, because the Commission did not approve their plan. So yeah, it is very important to look into not just EU money for some countries. Right, so if I may, because we're very close to the end, I don't know, to be honest, I was expecting more people, because more people registered, and perhaps this, oops, no, this is not sharing, now it's sharing. Perhaps we can now visit those questions that I mentioned at the beginning. I don't know if you feel you have plans you want or can share at this stage, or whether you think, we've heard from Andras that indeed you're already working on this. I know from Acția Democrația that you're going to work on this. But you know, in general, if you could give us a bit of a sense, and if I may add one question, if you have a sense of what movements on the ground are thinking of about recovery funds, I'll briefly add that Fridays for Future in Italy has just announced 2 days ago that that they are going to be focusing on recovery funds as a topic in their mobilization on the 19th of March. So the 19th of March is the Global Day of Action for Fridays for Future. Each country, each group in each country has the decision to focus on one topic or another within a wider, scope that the leadership, so to say, of Fridays for Future has established. And Italy has, the Fridays for Future in Italy has decided that they will focus on recovery funds in their actions. which I think is great news. But I haven't heard of any other movements, any other countries making the same decision. So if you can share, if you know of any movements doing this, planning to do this, your organization is planning to work on recovery funds, then I think we can start thinking of how to work together. Oh, Piotr.
Yeah, so maybe I can start if you point to Akcja a few minutes ago. Yes, we are planning to do some kind of a joint campaign with organizations from Hungary and from Romania. This is our partners from the net named Open, focused on digital campaigning. And now we are planning to start after the moment when our governments will present their drafts plan. And now we are thinking about some kind of campaigning and some kind of an appeal to European Commission, because our three organizations do not see any convincing theory of change in appealing to our national governments. As far as I know, there is some kind of a, I don't name it as a coalition, but maybe some organizations that know each other, environmental non-governmental organizations with partnership with some kind of entrepreneurs organization. They a week ago or 2 weeks ago, they presented some kind of an open letter to our Prime Minister, Mateusz Morawiecki, about our national recovery plan. And they focused on not only on a climate issue, but also on some kind of a growth or reform issues. And maybe this kind of a narration around a new Marshall Plan, or maybe it's better to say maybe some kind of narration around the growth. Maybe it's not the best narration from our point of view. And now we are thinking about the focus on a climate narration and about this opportunity, especially for Poland, to get a big amount of money for transformation of our energy system, which is very coal dependent, and just transition. So this kind of topics. And this not coalition, but most kind of a partnership of this environmental non-governmental organization, as far as I know, and I contacted with some guys from this, they also plan to do some kind of a public, they get invitation to be part of consultation, a part of a consultation of the draft. And as far as I know, the consultation in Poland will start in the next week. So this is very, very, very late. And they do not plan, our Polish government do not plan a wide public consultations. There's some kind of a consultation in the form of a, Zoom meeting for interested people. And this partnership of environmental and non-governmental organizations like WWF here in Poland, Client Earth from Poland, and some kind of entrepreneurs organization, they plan to do some kind of a public, when our government will present the draft, they will try to do some kind of a public criticism of the worst part of this plan, and some kind of, if there is any good plans, they also try to do a kind of a public, I can't find this word in English for this, but that they want to say that, okay, this part is good and this part it's not good. But I haven't heard about any ideas. But I'm not contacted with people from climate movements here in Poland for the last 2 or 3 weeks. But I haven't heard about any ideas of our climate movements, the Polish part of Fridays for Future or Extinction Rebellion, or the other organization movements like Earth Strike, to to do anything around this recovery plan.
Thank you, Piotr, for the update. Yeah, let's see if we can help with that, like trying to convince Polish movements that this is an important thing. I know Andrzej, or I'm not sure how you pronounce your name. You're based in the Czech Republic, and I was wondering if you would be able to share if movements in your country are showing interest or knowledge about this topic, planning to activate themselves around it. Or maybe you're not with us anymore.
Oh, yes, I am here. It's just a bit hard for me to speak. I'm Andrej. So not as far as I know, we have several organizations here. I mostly know about the ones participating in direct action, and they definitely don't have, like, at least not a public plan to do something about it. In Extinction Rebellion, we're planning 3 actions at the moment. We're planning a financial action, like against BEC's funding fossil fuels at the end of March, and that hasn't been linked to this. Then we're planning a great rebellion in spring, probably May or beginning of June, and that may actually be linked to the funds. That wouldn't be too bad of an idea. And then in the autumn, we're also planning another great rebellion, and that one's going to be focused on the parliamentary elections in Czechia. And it would be perfect for the funds, but unfortunately, if I understand the plan correctly, then autumn is too late. And so the parties probably won't be competing based on what they're going to do with the funds. That's probably going to happen in summer, if I have understood it correctly. But the spring rebellion is definitely something that could be involved with the funds. And I think that this is an idea that I'm going to bring back to the movement.
Wonderful. Let us know if you need any help. Anyone else? Maybe Georgie in Bulgaria?
Yeah, I can share some positive news in this regard. I mean, there are not only negative news. Well, let me just turn on my camera. Sorry, guys, I'm from my phone. Well, we started to work on this issue in Bulgaria since the beginning. That's happened actually June last year, when everything started officially in Bulgaria. We have formed the so-called Green Restart Coalition. Basically, this is WWF, Greenpeace, Move BG. This is a local IT NGO, and the Circular Institute, another NGO. Well, since that time, we've been very active, and we been, organizing some meetings, some campaigns. Our first draft of the national plan went out in 30th of November. We managed actually to see big change from the first draft to the second draft that actually came out around 8 days ago. They're much different in a positive way. We still see some problems, like the government still want to continue the big piece of the cake. I mean, the big amount of the money to the state companies, like the national electricity companies, the railway company, and those such very unreformed companies that they're just, I don't know how they run, but they're not very efficient at all. And for us, this is a problem. The other new piece is that the government actually would like to switch from coal to hydrogen, but this is kind of fake, because they actually would like to build a natural gas grid. As a matter of fact, the natural gas grid in Bulgaria is not developed at all. We just have 2-3 main pipelines, and definitely they are not connected with the coal power plants. So we see this is a kind of biggest risk right now, the biggest part of the money to go for building a new gas pipelines, saying that those pipelines will be, kind of hybrid pipelines, where for the future we could use them for the hydrogen. Although there is no clear plan how this hydrogen will come up in regard of technology, who will invest on that, how we will produce it, and the other details related to that story. And also there is another big problem in Bulgaria that we are tackling, and this is the a big portion of money that are related about reconstructing the old-fashioned irrigating system that is already don't exist, but the government would like to rebuild it with following the old-fashioned style, like channels, pipes, you know. And actually the biggest part of the money, over 55%, are going for reconstruction and building something. This is just because the government has this profile to construct highways, construct everything. You know, so just as we're joking here, concrete and asphalt. That's how our government see the development part. And last but not least, we have elections after 5 weeks from now. We actually don't see this current government to be able to form the next cabinet, but they will be leading in regard of the results. And we actually hope that the new coalition that probably will be formed will be much more acceptable, the green transition, because just a year ago the Bulgarian never wanted to become anything I mean, they didn't accept anything related to the green story. It doesn't matter, European Green Deal, climate under the EU funds, whatever. Right now they are much more softer, but I believe this is because the upcoming election are knocking on our door, and they just would like not to be very negative in regards of the European goals. And more or less, the other NGOs, this is the final part from my side, the other NGOs, active local NGOs, they also got some support from, for example, European Climate Foundation. I know at least 2-3 individual NGOs or group of NGOs that they will also try to influence the last version of the plan, because we're expecting somewhere in the middle of March the third draft of our national plans to become public to us. And we are suffering actually that the government doing this in a kind of not really transparent way, but at least when they release the report, they put it in 2 languages, that they put it in the website, and this is already have it. So you can compare the first draft, the second draft, we know the date for the third draft, and at least we have access to the document and some a little bit in-house information from some of the institutions like the Council of Ministry, Ministry of Environment, etc. So the deadline of our government to submit the proposal is before the election, but I hope this not to happen, because you know they're trying to buy the election more or less with those money over from Bulgaria. Sorry for the long explanation.
That was useful, because Bulgaria is not a country we normally hear updates from, so thanks a lot. It's 6 o'clock, but if Christina or Zoltan want to share what's happening in your countries, your perspective, you're very welcome to do that.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry I joined the meeting later. Well, let's update you what's going on. The first version of the...
Sorry, Zoltan, what's your country, so that we know?
Romania. Romania, yes. So the first version of the NRRP plan was very criticized also by the Commission and also by the NGOs in Romania. There were a lot of irrigations and hard water regulation works and highways. And now last week was a series of debates with the ministry, and the ministry was very open, and he listened also the NGOs. It was the debate were not only with NGOs but also with other stakeholders like Association of the Municipalities and representative of different institutions, Let's see. We know we expect the next version, and we elaborated a document together with colleagues from other countries with the EEB in the framework of the project led by Clean Air Action Group. And now we also debated this document together with about 7 NGOs in Romania who also want to support this document. It's about big NGOs like WWF or other important NGOs. And now we are submitting this document to the ministry, and let's see what will be the next version of the plan. And also we are submitting to the Ministry of the Environment. So we submitting to the Ministry of the European funds and also to the Ministry of the Environment. And let's see how will be improved. Unfortunately, during the debates, the ministry confirmed that the construction of the highways will be was a priority, because Romania has a very poor network of highways, so the country needs. So let's see what's maybe it will be less than it was in the original plan. So let's see what will happen. We hope that this hard water regulation works, especially in protected areas like the hydropower plant in the Jiu River. So let's hope this will be taken out from this plan.
Quick question. Do you know if on the 19th of March, Fridays for Future in Romania or Extinction Rebellion at some other point are going to be mobilizing in Romania around the recovery funds, or you're not in touch with them?
We are not in touch, so I don't have this information. Let's see. If you can tell me about more information or contacts, maybe we will contact them.
We have some contacts. Maybe we can pass them on.
Okay. In Romania, the NGO movement is not very well organized, so there are a lot of initiatives. So it's good to have these contacts.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Christina, is there anything you'd like to share with us? You're based in Poland, I take it.
Yes, and Poland was pretty well covered before by Piotr, who's much better informed than me, so I'll restrain from...
Part of Extinction Rebellion, right?
Yes, I'm from a local group, but I am aware that we're talking to other organizations, and generally in spring there will be things happening, but so this could be one of the topics that we'll raise, and it's good to have knowledge and to spread it wide.
Super.
So thanks a lot.
Okay, so we are 6 minutes over time, and I think we all want to go about our Saturday. So thanks for making time today. And we will share the recording and the presentation and a little survey with 2 questions in case you think it's a good idea to have a Telegram group or not, or in case you think we need a follow-up meeting to continue talking. Instead of asking you now, because I think it's too late and we're all short-circuiting in our brains, perhaps let's think about it, and you let us know by email if you think we need to talk again about this and meet again.
Well, I raised a question, sorry, just for a second. I'm still looking for a portal or a website, official one or unofficial one, where actually we can see other national plans submitted to the Commission. I know that there are already 18 plans are submitted to the Commission, but for me it's very difficult to find those. I mean, for us in Bulgaria, it will be very useful to compare some other countries. And if you manage to have something on that, that will be grateful to share with us.
I have a couple of small things, but there is nothing official. There is work being done by some think tanks, and they share that information with us. So I'll ask if I can share those spreadsheets with you. Sure, that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
In any case, don't expect anything massively like full of information, and because the problem with recovery funds is that in all countries it's a very untransparent process,
Yeah.
very hidden, very secret. There is no portal in any country. There is no portal from the European Commission. So we'll share what we have, but don't have very high expertise.
Well, then maybe I can say that I already managed to collect the first drafts of 8 member states, but
Wonderful.
4 of them are on the national languages, and that's not really useful in regard of the full understanding, you know. But those are the first draft, and when I get the Bulgarian example, how much is the difference between the first and the second, then definitely is, you know, we just need to have a system where we can compare the drafts, doesn't matter first, second, third, and you know, to see also other member states, how they tackling the issues and the regulation, of course, and everything else.
I've just pasted on the chat something called Green Recovery Tracker, which is a joint effort by 3 NGOs. They're trying to do exactly what you say. And I know they rely on information from national partners. So I'll put you in touch with them because the more information they have, the more they can add to this portal. I think it's very useful. At the moment, they have Spain, Portugal, France, and Italy.
France and Italy, or Germany, I think was Germany. Yeah. I know them, but if you put me in contact, that will be great, because I also can share at least the Bulgarian ones. We would do work also with Greece, and I also have the Greek one.
Wow.
Well, yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'll put you all in touch with them after asking them first, because if you have that information you just shared for your countries and can share it with them, then we can have it all under this website for everyone to access. So thanks a lot for
Sure. Thank you.
Right. Have a nice, great Saturday and speak soon.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.